All I can do is fall down on my knees and cry, holy, holy. It's the tagline of a kind of like the chorus of a 20-odd-year-old contemporary Christian music song by the band Salvador. It's one of the groups I used to play back in my dance teaching days. We choreographed a dance piece to the song Cry Holy, which was like a highly emotionally charged power ballad of sorts. I still remember parts of the choreography, like this backwards fall onto our knees at the height of the chorus. I totally show you, except I have middle-aged knees now. It's the kind of song that transports some of us upwards and away into the heavenly realms, taking us beyond the troubles or afflictions of this world. The song inspires by expressing the power and majesty of a holy God whose presence overwhelms. As far as I know, the song Cry Holy is not based on any particular psalm or biblical passage, but it fits well with today's Psalm 99. The Lord reigns, it begins, let the people tremble. The Lord is enthroned upon the cherubim, let the earth shake. You are the Holy One, the psalm repeats 3 times in different ways. Psalm 99 is part of a small set of psalms of what's known as enthronement psalms that exuberantly proclaim the countercultural message that the Lord reigns as ruler over the entire universe. It's a countercultural message because if the Lord reigns, then Caesar doesn't, Trump doesn't, Babylon doesn't, Musk doesn't, Pilate doesn't, we don't. The Lord reigns. And this Lord is a lover of justice. This Lord establishes equity, executing justice and righteousness. This Lord both forgives and avenges, forgiving sin and holding accountable. This Lord isn't messing around. The Lord reigns, let the people tremble. It's a different way of experiencing God's presence when all I can do is fall down on my knees and cry holy. Back when I was dancing to Cry Holy, it never occurred to me that the experience of being in the presence of a holy God might actually be transcendent in its terror. I didn't know that until I did. A few years later, I had a dream of being in a desert. I was on retreat at the Society of St. John the Evangelist, SSJE's monastery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In my dream, I was exposed to the full brightness, this full strength of the sun shining down on me in the desert. Far from being kind of a lovely vision, comforting and peaceful, this dream, this vision was terrifying. What I remember most, what I remembered for years, was that all my dream self wanted was shelter, a hat maybe, or a coat, or a tent, or a canopy, something to protect me from the brightness and the heat, the exposure to the sun. My dream self had nowhere to turn, nowhere to hide, nothing to protect me. It was deeply uncomfortable, in part because I kind of knew it was about God. And I had trouble shaking it off when I woke up and talked with my spiritual director at the retreat about it. He was empathetic and he affirmed, unfortunately, yup, an experience of God could be kind of scary. Visions, he said, might well trouble as much as comfort. It has faded now, but that dream haunted me for years. What I remembered most was that visceral fear of the unrelenting sun that had something to do with God's presence. The Lord reigns, our psalmist writes today. Let the people tremble. It's comforting to me to know that I'm not alone in the experience of trembling before God. Indeed, I am not alone by a long shot. The description of fear, even terror, is very common in biblical stories of when God's presence is powerfully experienced. Do not be afraid is a mantra of the angels and other sacred beings throughout Scripture. It's the first thing Jesus says to the disciples when he approaches them by walking on water, for instance. Today, in the transcendent story of Jesus transfigured before Peter and John and James up on the mountaintop, the overshadowing of a cloud evokes terror. Notably, the disciples still enter that cloud and hear a divine message, which I think is maybe the important to the point of all of the stories. The powerful and overwhelming presence of God evokes fear and trembling, and those feelings don't stop us from interacting, from being in relationship with God. Maybe we're just meant to be a little wary in the presence of a being so big and powerful, as holy as God. The Hebrew root that we translate as holy literally means to set aside or to be set aside. It means to be different. Now, different generations and different times apply different meanings to the notion of difference. We can hear it in kind of in a tone of voice, well, he's different. We say, kind of meaning that, he's kind of strange, maybe dangerous. Or we might say, well, that's different, to describe an experience that we don't really want to repeat. In contemporary parlance, different can also be viewed in much more positively, meaning unique or awesome at something, even tremendous. And maybe God is a little bit of all of those things: different, awesome, strange, dangerous, unique, holy. And that's why being in God's presence can be scary, or at least unpleasant, particularly for those unused to it. I once heard the holiness of God and the idea of the fear of the Lord compared to the interaction of cowboys with bulls at a rodeo. Now, if you've ever seen it or seen a rodeo, especially up close, you know that getting on the back of a bull is crazy. You also know that when the cowboys are bucked off, they jump up out of the dirt and get to safety as quickly as possible. Bulls can do serious damage to a human. So if you're going to get in the ring with one, which the cowboys do, you best show them the respect of being a little bit afraid. Likewise, when we find ourselves in the presence of God's awesome and tremendous holiness, we best show the respect of falling down on our knees to cry, holy. For our God is a holy one. The Lord reigns, and the rulers of the world come second place, so we don't need to be afraid of them. These days, more than usual, this sounds like good news to me. For our mighty sovereign is a lover of justice, who establishes equity, who both forgives and holds accountable. This probably should be uncomfortable, especially for those who think of themselves as exalted, above the law, almighty. But when we find ourselves afraid and enter a sacred cloud of unknowing, despite our fear, we might just hear a holy word to sustain us through whatever comes next.